All right, so on today's episode, we are talking about the Demartini hierarchy of values. Justin and I both happen to be talking about a thought leader that we both follow. His name is Dr. John Demartini, and he has this assessment that you can take on his website, which tells you the true values that you live in your life. Justin, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you stumbled on this and what it is exactly? And how you came into the whole DeMartini world.
Yeah, so I think Dr. John Demartini has been a name that I've known for quite some time, and fairly recently I've been working with a performance coach, and
Hmm.
he mentioned to me that he thought a really good exercise to do would be diving a little bit deeper into understanding what my core values are. So what drives a lot of what I do, and he pointed me in the direction of the core values assessment on the Dr. John Demartini website. So as you say, 13 questions, easy assessment to do, and really helps you define what this hierarchy of values in your life is. And when I first when I first started going through the exercise, the outcome that I had in mind and what I actually came to at the end of the day, two vastly different things. But I had the idea that I was going to go through this core values exercise and get the typical outcomes that one might do when going through a values exercise for your business. It's the honesty and it's the respect and it's the chivalry and those types of values. But as I was going through it, I realized it's going to look very, very different to that, because the questions which are prompting you is really around: what do you spend your time doing? What does your space look like? What is contained in your space? Because all these things, what you spend your time on, what you have around you, how messy your space is, those are all an indication of things that you value in your lives. What photos you have up on the wall. So the method of questioning was very, very interesting for me. And as I say, the outcome at the end of the day as well was something that I didn't quite expect. How about you?
Yeah, same here. The one thing that was unique about this is, like, you can say, I could tell you all day what's important to me. Like, oh, my family's so important to me and whatever, going to church. But then when you look at the actual, well, how much time do you spend doing this? How much money do you devote to this? That gives you the actual truth about what's valuable to you. And it can be some surprises in there. And there were surprises for me. I'm sure there were some surprises for you. So we encourage all of our listeners to go and take this values test. We don't get anything from this. We just found it to be useful in our lives. So we encourage you to go take it, and we'll give you the link in the show notes. But with that said, Justin, let's dive into your results. Are you up for it? Are you going to share
Yeah.
these with our listeners?
Absolutely. Let's run through them. Let's see if they shock you as much as they shocked me, Ethan.
Okay, we'll just kind of talk about each other's here. So I noticed in your results, Justin, that it came down to four categories that you labeled here: your work, your appearance, your status, and your impact. Now, out of those four, the two that tied for first place were your work and your appearance. Did you expect that, or were you surprised by that?
I expected the work. Uh, I I sometimes let work become all consuming for me. Like it's a big part of my life, and it drives a lot for me. So I realized, particularly going through the questions, how much time do you allocate to certain things or spend doing certain things? I knew that was going to be come out pretty close to the top, as well as so the appearance is an interesting one. In fact, Ethan, if we take a step back, all of these, the big takeaway for me was, and it was quite it was quite something to admit to myself, uh, but I'm very ego driven. That's what the answers to this core values assessment told me, because my work was very much related to success and needing to have some sort of success and validation, and have that almost publicly known so that it could drive and fuel this ego. Until I did this, I didn't think I had an ego, to be honest, but that made me have quite a different lens on it. So that was on the work side. The appearance, and that's why I even labeled it my work and my appearance. The appearance comes from the fact that I love exercise. I love keeping fit. I love keeping healthy. Go to gym pretty much most days. I run a lot. And as I was going through those questions and unpacking it more and more, I sometimes hide behind the idea of living a healthy lifestyle and wanting to be healthy, when a lot of the time I'm wanting to look good. I'm wanting to look good so that if people see me, they're like, that guy works out and he looks. So again, I had the
Yeah.
realization that there's quite an influence of ego that's coming through in both those first two. And then my status and my impact, again, it was related to being able to stand up and share information and talk in front of people, and have them know who I am, and leave an impact. And again, I realized, okay, this is interesting. These are quite ego driven ways that you're wanting to kind of add value in the world. So yeah, my big takeaway from all of it was, immediately I'd expected like honesty, respect, and all of those values. Immediately, it was something totally different, and it was a bit of shock to the system, saying, Justin, there is an ego that you need to be aware of, and it's something that I'm really trying to work on now.
So if I can challenge that just a little bit, is ego something being ego driven? Is that necessarily a bad thing? Because I can relate to the fitness aspect. I think that when I first got into fitness, it was out of pure vanity. Like I want to look good. I want to look my best. Um, and then as I got older, there are some real health concerns. When I went to the doctor and had high cholesterol, and I had high visceral fat, and he's like, that's directly linked to heart disease. It's like, oh, okay, this is more serious than just my appearance. So now I have two motivators to keep me in shape. In fact, I'm dealing with that right now because I have a knee injury that I'm dealing with, which has impacted the level of running that I can do that I've been used to doing. But it's messing with me more mentally than I thought it would, because in the back of my mind, if I'm being honest, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'm not going to look as good if I can't keep running. Or is that sometimes I ask myself, is that secondary to my health, or is my health secondary to my vanity? But is it necessarily good? Because either way, it pushes me to keep going, because I'm like, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm not going to let it defeat me, or just let me get out of shape and get fat, because I know then it would affect my confidence levels, which I think is one of the best benefits of being in shape, and of being, satisfying your ego and feeling good about yourself and how you look physically affects your confidence. And that translates into everything else in your life, into when you're making sales in your business, when you're giving a presentation or a speech, or even when you're going out socially. Man, it just exudes a certain level of confidence, and that translates into benefits in every other area of your life. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be driven by ego. What are your thoughts on that?
So yeah, you really are challenging me on the way I was viewing this. I think the biggest thing is, there's a place for ego as long as it's not only self-serving. I I think I'm a huge believer in being able to show up as the best version, and maybe this is a good way to look at it. I'm a big believer in being able to show up as the best version of yourself. And being able to show up as the best version of yourself is probably the kindest thing that you can do for all the people in your life and around you. And very often, in order to show up as the best version of yourself, there needs to be an element of selfishness in making sure that you are doing the necessary exercise, and getting your meditation in, so that you're showing up in the best mental state possible, or whatever those small elements are. So yes, I think that an element of ego is a good thing. I've always had this saying, and this is quoted Justin King. You can quote Justin King, that ego is just fear in wolf's clothing. So I think that is sometimes something that I'm very aware of myself. As soon as I see ego coming into play for myself, I kind of go a layer deeper, and I'm thinking, why? And what am I worried about? What fear do I have? Is there a fear of not being enough? So I mean, if we're going a little bit deeper, I think that's what got to me as I was going through those four values of mine. it was, what is driving this, Justin? Is there a fear of not being enough, and are you trying to mask that by really spending the time focused on these areas of your life? And if that's the case, how do we go a step deeper and maybe kind of figure out what that root cause is of that feeling of not necessarily being enough? Sorry, we're getting a little bit deeper now, but
No,
it
that's
brought out
great.
a lot. It brought out a lot for me as I was working through it.
Well, Tony Robbins says that everything boils down to two fears: fear that I won't be loved, or fear that I'm not enough. Like if you're in, so I went to Tony Robbins, UPW, Unleash the Power Within. I guess this was about this is like 2015, 2016. That was one of the core takeaways. Like every limiting belief we have in our life, if we want to be somewhere, we're not pursuing that, then it always boils down to fear of some sort. And he boiled it down to those being the two fears: fears that I'm not enough, or fear that I won't be loved. Which I thought was really deep. And I found that to be true
Amazing.
in my life as well. What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
I get that. I listened to a podcast episode recently where Tim Ferriss was chatting to Richard. I would pronounce it Koch, but I think it's Koch, Koch,
Mm,
80/20 principle. Really, really interesting episode. And he also spoke about, if you come across somebody who is very unhappy in their lives or in their life in the last 6 to 12 months, you can almost guarantee that it's because of the fact that there's a significant limiting belief in their life at the moment, and they've got to try and unpack what that limiting belief is, and that can ultimately help them find that path to happiness. So yeah, we very much on the same page. I think it just made me realize that this whole, and sorry, I don't want to make this all about me because I'd love to ask you about your values as well. But
hmm
it just made me realize how powerful going through an exercise like this can be, because you go into it with one thought, you come out learning something completely different from yourself, and it will be completely different for each and every person that goes into it. So really, it's been a special experience so far, and yeah, trying to take what I've learned and unpack it further and really translate it into some actions for myself to be able to drive change and move forward in my life.
So speaking of actions, and your results, I mean, honestly, they're pretty evenly split. I know your work and your appearance were 26% each, and then status was third place at 21%, and then your impact was 18%. And if I understand what you're saying, it seems like you were a bit surprised. You thought that the impact part would be higher, and you were surprised by the appearance and the work being higher. And I think that's where you're saying about the ego coming in, because from your perception, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm kind of paraphrasing what I'm hearing you say between the lines, but it's those are more selfish goals in nature, and whereas the impact is more outward expression and more selfless. So whereas you thought going into it that the more selfless aspects of your life would be the highest, you were surprised that the more um, quote unquote selfish, ego driven aspects were highest. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it's a fair assessment. I'm a very empathetic individual. I'm very gentlemanly, so I would always think that those other elements are going to rank really a lot higher if you put a list of core values down for me. So this is why I think this assessment is just absolute gold, because it works around all the fluff, the perception and the perceived ideas that I had around myself. These questions that it asked, the way that it asked them, it quickly worked its way around those and got to some pretty real shit for me.
Mm.
And and I think to a degree, as I was going through it, I started realizing that I would need to do this exercise again at some stage. But for on this occasion and in this moment, I needed to focus on it from the point of view of, this is really outlining some interesting truths about myself and ego. And I leant into that, and that's why my results came out like they did. I really did lean into that. So yeah, it's been great.
So
It's just been very interesting.
what's changed since you took this assessment, if anything?
It's been an awareness more than anything else for me. As I mentioned earlier, I've never thought of myself as somebody that carried any sort of ego. So this was it was a reality check. It was interesting for me. It may also be a timing thing. I got divorced 18 months ago, so that's been kind of the process of also working with this performance coach, and then unpacking core values, and getting back onto the topic of wondering if one is enough. And yeah, I mean, that's going through something like that impacts your confidence quite a bit. And that means I've lent into then trying to fill that gap with focusing on more on work and focusing on my appearance more to elevate the confidence levels. So it's so interesting, because as I've gone through it, I've just realized how all these different areas of your life and how you're going through things, it really it impacts what you're focused on in that moment, and possibly in this context what you value most. Because again, the way that the questions are positioned, it's what you are spending the majority of your time doing currently. And there's nothing that you cannot question that which you value if you're spending your time doing it. You cannot argue the fact that if you are doing it and you say you don't value it, then you're possibly lying. Or why are you spending so much time doing it? And that's what this called out for me. Is it really pointed out the things that I'm spending the majority of my time doing, and I've got to really unpack the why behind that.
Yeah, well, yeah. One, it's like welcome to the church of the painful truth. Here's what you really value. And I was
Exactly.
surprised by a lot of things too. And I think I read somewhere that you should take this assessment every 3 months or so,
Yeah,
because it is
exactly.
heavily influenced by what you're going through. Um,
Correct. So let's put you in the hot seat.
yeah.
So if I'm having a look at yours, so you had 7 that came out
Hmm.
altogether. You definitely did a better job than I did as far as diving a bit deeper and being a little bit more thorough. It seems, Ethan. So
Hmm.
you've got 7. Your top being influential public speaking at 23%, physical transformation at 23% as well. Lifelong learning was third at 15%. Travel was fourth at 15%. Getting rich, I love the honesty, was fifth at 13%. Day to day work, 8%. And then 3% was family. Now, some people might think that that means you don't value your family. I'm glad they made the list. Glad they made the list.
You know,
So,
that was probably my biggest surprise after I took this, because I
yeah.
definitely, oh, I adore my kids. I love them to death. We're always hanging out. So when I saw this, I said, "No way, 3% family. That's crazy." So what does that really say about where my mind was when I took this? And I think when I took this assessment, I was really focused on it from a career standpoint. And I took this about this was March of 2022, so about a year,
Okay.
about 15 months ago, when I took this assessment. And I was really heavily focused on my public speaking career at the time. And um, but it's interesting because this is a pie chart that we're looking at, and so it's 100%, and so everything has to fall somewhere. So at the time, that's where my actual time and money where my energy and my resources were being spent more on these career things, and my family hit the bottom of the list. It really affected me in a deep way. I thought, oh God, that's not true. I love my family, but maybe at the time I wasn't spending the the energy that I need to, and the time and the money with them that I needed to. So
It, it's interesting. So sorry, I'm cutting you off there. Was you wanted to add to that?
no, I was gonna jump into like what hit the top, the public speaking. Um, and that's been a big part of my life ever since the book launch. Oh, and that's another thing. So my book, I took this in March of 2022, March 27th, 2022. This was 2 weeks after my book launch of Wealth Beyond Money.
Ah, yeah.
So, but the whole pushing it and going on speaking tours and appearing on podcasts was a big, big part of my life. Um, so I do need to take this assessment again. I wonder how it would pan out now. And then under that, and this is a similarity I see with you, physical transformation, my second thing, which I think relates to your part about appearance. I just named it differently.
Yeah.
Um, but that's almost a quarter of, it's 23%. So almost one quarter of my life or my values are focused on physical transformation. And, getting back to the why is that important to me? Is it because of ego and appearance? And, I was talking about the whole confidence thing earlier. I feel like your physical transformation plays a part in so many things in your life. And then next on my list is lifelong learning. But for me, those two are very closely tied together because when I was young, I wasn't very athletic at all. I had asthma growing up. I couldn't run a mile to save my life without like getting winded and having to walk half of it. So I didn't start working out until age 30, not seriously. And one of the things that got me to work out more consistently was when I got my first iPod, because then I could listen to audiobooks and podcasts and be learning while I was running and working out. So that those two are very, very closely tied for me. And I mentioned my knee injury that I'm dealing with right now. So I've been swimming more because that's low impact. So this summer I've been doing a lot of swimming. I swim 1,000 yards every day. Well, the issue was I didn't have yeah, you can't use headphones in the water. So I have my AirPods when I'm running, and I'm always listening to audiobooks and podcasts and feeding my brain. Otherwise, I get kind of bored. And I think a lot of people get bored when it comes to fitness. So I need to be stimulating my brain because I guess I just don't have enough mental discipline to just swim for 45 minutes or an hour looking at the bottom of the pool, listening to nothing. So I went on this quest to find some waterproof headphones, and I finally found a pair. I'll talk about them once I got to find the brand name that I got from Amazon. But I found a pair of waterproof headphones, so I was able to load some podcasts onto the headphones and listen to them while I swim. And I didn't excuse me, it didn't really hit me until then how closely related learning and physical transformation are for me. They're very much intertwined. Do you is it the same for you, or do you listen to music, or what do you do when you work out?
It's absolutely the same for me. So if I'm in the gym, I've got either music or a podcast on, predominantly a podcast. But I use, so there, physical transformation, lifelong learning, hugely interlinked for me. But it actually depends what type of exercise I'm doing, because like you, I love running. And when I'm out on the road, or if I'm in the mountain, I don't listen to anything. I try to use that more as a time to think and think clearly and just be. And I find obviously I can't do that if I've got music in my ears. Definitely can't do that. And or a podcast would be even worse from that point of view, because then I'm really immersed in the content in that discussion. So again, in the gym, exercising and learning; on the road, exercising and quiet. Just me, my thoughts, contemplation, and hopefully coming out off the back of it with some clarity on a few things in my life.
Yeah, definitely.
That could be the same for you in the swimming pool. But I
Yeah,
know just trying to follow that line at the bottom of the pool, just looking at the tiles after length after length is quite a thing. So
yeah.
I do have a question for you, Ethan.
Hmm.
Do you not think that a lot of these of your values, because you said that it impacted you quite deeply, seeing your family listed, or not your family, but family listed as a value right at the bottom.
Hmm.
But do you not think the majority of what you've listed as values all serve your family? So in
Mm.
essence, if you get all of those, I mean, you are allocating time and energy and purpose and meaning to those other values of yours, because ultimately you get those right and you're serving your family by doing
That is very true. You made me feel a lot better, Justin. Thank you.
that.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I'm doing the speaking to help others, but also earn an income to provide for my family. Physical transformation. As I get older, I want to be here for my family. I want to have energy. I mean, even when I get
Yeah.
in the pool, my kids they're 9 and 13 now, so they're getting bigger, they're getting heavier, but they still want me to toss them around in the pool like I did when they were 2 years old, where I could throw them halfway across the pool. Now I can't. throwing them as far, but they still want me to do that. So I want to be able to keep in shape for more reasons that benefit my family as well, and the learning. And I try to instill that in them as well, like to be lifelong learners. That's definitely one of our family core values.
Yeah,
And travel, yes, I love traveling with them. Last year we took a big trip to the safari. We went to Kenya,
amazing.
to Mahali, Missouri, and we stayed at Richard Branson's resort, which I think ranked the number one hotel in the world in Travel and Leisure magazine last year or the year before. So that was a huge life experience, and I'm glad that my kids got to witness that and that we were able to do that. I like to show them both sides of the coin. So the day before we went to Richard Branson's resort, we were in Kibera, in the slums of Africa. This is the largest slums in all of Africa. And we went to a school there, and we got to sit in the classroom with the Kenyan children. And it was just an amazing experience. They were so nice and so happy for us to spend time with them. But my kids got a chance to see what real poverty is like when a family is living off of $2, the equivalent of $2 US per day, and you're feeding an entire family off of that. It really touched my kids deeply, and even my daughter has donated money to the school. We sent money there after our trip, and we continue to support them. And she just really was touched deeply, and but then to also be able to appreciate what we have and what we've built. And I think you should enjoy the fruits of your labor, and that's why we were able to go stay at the number one hotel in the world, which is just I'm just so thankful for even that opportunity. Um, so yeah, travel and then yeah, getting rich, obviously that benefits my family as
Yeah,
well. And then, and it's interesting. I separated that from the day to day work, because the day to day for me, the things in my business that I've built, that I've been running for 20 years, that's the boring work, right? Like Alex Hormozy says, you got to do the boring work. But I feel like sometimes the day to day work doesn't push the needle forward towards my goals, but you got to do it to pay the bills, which of course benefits the family. So I'm
yeah.
glad that you brought that up. It definitely made me feel a lot better there, Justin. Thanks.
Amazing. So another question. We're going to do a quick drag and drop exercise, Ethan, because like we've been saying, these values will change. You should do this on a regular basis. So if you had to, looking at those seven now, if you had to drag and drop, so if you had to reorder them, what do you think your top three would be right now? Looking at that list as it currently is.
Right now, probably my physical transformation would hit the top of the list, because it is so on the forefront of my mind with this injury and offsetting that, that it's really been yeah. I got a new scale, and I've really been tracking my weight and my diet now. It is on the forefront of my mind, because I am the heaviest now that I've been in the past 10 years. And now that's relative. Somebody else would probably look at me and say, dude, you're in great shape. But for me, knowing where tracking my numbers, which, that which, what is the phrase? That which you measure improves, I think
Yeah.
is something like that, like Deming or somebody said that. So I haven't been measuring it. I haven't been measuring my body fat percentage and my weight. So I just got a new scale, because my old scale died. So I just got a new scale, just started direct tracking it. I'm like, oh, whoa, these numbers I haven't seen in 10 years. So that would be at the number one for me. Um, Travel would probably come down the list. Family would probably move up the list. Maybe speaking would stay about where it is. But what about for you?
Yeah, I think it's slightly tricky for me from the point of view that I need to break mine down into. I need to break each of these into probably two or three categories themselves. But right now, if as per the four categories of work, my appearance, my status, and my impact, they wouldn't change. That like currently, that is very much. If I did that again, I think it would come out in this order right now again. So yeah, I would like to see this list being a little bit longer, like yours, becoming a little bit more granular. And the reason that I say that, and because is because I feel what you've just done is pretty powerful. And I think that if you do this assessment or the core values exercise, whichever way you want to do it, enough times, you will ultimately get to your set of 7, 8, 9, 5 core values that really do drive your life. And I think it's then amazing to be able to revisit those on a regular basis and realize that it's okay that these are going to shuffle. That, okay, well, for right
Mhm.
now, because of what I'm going through and what my family is experiencing or whatever it may be, I have to push this one to the top. That doesn't mean that I'm forgetting these other three or I'm forgetting about my family or whoever it is. That just means in the season that I'm going through, this is going to best serve me and it's going to best serve the people around me if I push this one to the top and maybe this one to second. So that's, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing what you did now, because that's, again, I mean, this has been an amazing learning experience just being having this discussion with you now. But
Yeah.
ultimately,
That's
get to where
awesome.
you want to
So
be.
again, we're talking about Dr. Demartini, and you guys can take this assessment at DrDemartini.com. So that's DrDemartini.com. Take the values assessment. It's only 13 questions, but the insights it gives you are tremendous, and it's very well done. Again, we get nothing from this personally, but we're just sharing a great tool with you guys. Anything else you want to share on this episode, Justin?
No, I think that's it. I hope there were some nuggets for everybody listening.
All right. We'll catch you guys next time.
Cheers, guys.